Mental Training 101. And now back to Get Warrior Tough with Andrew and Dutch.
All right, we're back at it. Dutch and Andrew and Dutch. You want to get in on this, give us a call at 855-856-1380. That's 855-856-1380. On Twitter, use the hashtag GetWarriorTough. You can find Dutch at @DutchColeman. I'm at WarriorToughPhD. Go to GetWarriorTough.com. Dutch, before the break, we were talking about the blue team and the green team. They just split these folks up arbitrarily. And one of the sociologists that was doing the experiment said it reminded of when he was growing up in Cyprus, where the Greeks and the Turkish youths used to wear sashes of black and red, and how those sashes, when tensions rose between the two groups. Now, listen, I spent some time over in Kosovo, and it's the same thing with the Albanians and the Serbians. I mean, they just hate each other. And we can't, there's just not even a reason why. You never even met them, so why you hate them, right? So we see that kind of with the gangs and stuff, youth gangs here in the States.
Absolutely. You don't have to go far. South Central L.A., Bloods and the Crips, blue and red. I mean, it was, to people who are outside that community, I remember when it first really hit home, people were laughing at the fact that people were fighting over the colors that they were wearing. And as you said, people didn't realize that they were living in that same world, but just it wasn't a violent world, or it wasn't. I mean, you still had, Oakland Raider fans, fighting New York Jets fans. One's wearing green, one's wearing black.
Right.
It was the same thing, but it was just a slightly different atmosphere. But we all participate in it. When I used to live in Indianapolis, you had Indianapolis fans, physically fighting fans from the opposing teams, and the opposing fans weren't even doing anything but wearing the other colors. I remember witnessing events where a guy would just be walking by in the other guy's colors, and then they would just get jumped on. So that mentality didn't even need a spark. It was just the fact that they were wearing those colors. So those people's eyes saw those colors, and then it sent a signal to their brain and made them react that way. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but this is how the machine works, though, right? And we need to understand how the human machine works. All right, so here's another one. They took 12-year-old boys and they went to this camp, summer camp, right? And they arbitrarily, again, just divided the boys into two groups. So, and then they noticed the three phases, right? So phase one of the experiment, the groups gradually developed a group identity, leaders emerged, and then they got group spirit, kind of like school spirit or team spirit, right? Yay, our teams. Then during the second phase, the two groups started interacting with each other, and a rivalry flourished. They became competitive, and competitive turned to extremely competitive. Then they started calling each other names, and you know what happened next, right?
Yes.
Fisticuffs, right?
Explosion.
Yeah, so this fights broke out. It was like watching, watching two football teams, what is it, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Steelers in that last game. It's almost like they're fighting, right? So, and then finally, okay, the two groups refused to have anything to do with each other. So now here's phase three. We got to get them back together and reduce tensions. Otherwise, a war is going to start here at this summer camp, right? We're not going to take it. We're not going to. So what they did is they had these non-competitive social activities, such as watching a movie together or sharing the dining room, right? But this seemed to have the opposite effect. Like now fights are breaking out in the mess hall and at the movie theater. It's not even competitive, but now we just hate each other, just like you said. I see the colors, boom, you're the other team, you're the other group. Okay, so it wasn't until the researchers had figured out that what we have to do is create a bigger enemy so that they will come together. So they had to basically threaten their survival. He said, hey, guys, there's no chow tonight because down the road, the truck that was delivering the food is stuck in the mud. So if you guys want to eat tonight, I don't know what to tell you. So they went down and they worked together getting the truck out of the mud so that they could get their food. And so they began to pull together. But now this is a huge leadership lesson right here, because this is what a good leader does. If I don't have an enemy, I need to create one for my people, because we'll fight internally without some external outgroup. So if I'm a CEO or I'm a coach, of any organization, what I have to do is create an enemy so that we won't fight each other, because there's got to be a bigger threat to our survival, and we'll pull together. This is what was so big in the Cold War. The Soviet Union was the U.S.'s enemy, so it was a very clear-cut enemy. They're evil, the evil empire, right? So they're bad and we're good. So it allowed us to come together, and there was way less tensions in the country between political ideology and different groups because we had a common enemy. Once that went away, then we started infighting again.
Absolutely. We were joking about this before, and I think it's by design in a lot of cases with a lot of people who try and create strife, try to create these conflicts throughout the nation, these different groups that are trying to keep us divided. And it's a very simple formula. And like you said, it's being done as early as middle school, and is much older as we're full seasoned adults. So it's sad that it's such a simple formula and it's so effective. But again, we're here to help you get through this so you won't fall victim to it.
Right, and understand that now, one of the once there is the enemy, like I'm just going to use the Soviets and the U.S. because some folks aren't old enough to remember, but you and I, Dutch, were old enough to remember that was a big deal, right? And
oh yeah.
So during that Cold War, we had traded shooting down airliners, right? There was one airliner, like the Korean airliner, was shot down by the Soviets, and then an Iranian airliner, these are civilian jets, were shot down by the Americans, right? Now, the media described the Soviets as an uncivilized, brutal act with disregard for human life, but the American incident was described as it was a tragic mistake, but of course justified because they were in our airspace.
Right.
So this is one of the key things when we do the in-group, out-group is the double standard in attention and evaluation. So you hear people, it's a double standard. They don't hold people to the same standard. That should be a red flag. If you're hearing that language, someone says it's a double standard or you see a double standard, understand you're in the middle of a in-group, out-group dynamic.
Absolutely. One of our favorite ones to talk about is the spy situation, where our spies compared to Soviet spies. Our spies are good.
No, tell me what you said. No, tell me what you said. You're showing our age again. Dutch and I watched cartoons when we were kids. What was it?
Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Rocky and Bullwinkle, baby.
You had Boris and Natasha.
Yeah.
You had the bad guys. They were spies just like Rocky and Bullwinkle, and but they were really, really bad. They're evil, but they're doing the same thing that Rocky and Bullwinkle's job was.
Spies are spies, man.
Oh yeah, spies are cool when we talk about American spies. Oh man, it's so cool. I want to be a spy.
Yeah.
You get to do this. You get to talk to your shoe, and But then when you talk about Soviet spies, you get this dark tone, and they're evil and they kill people and they do all kind of stuff like this. So yeah, it's real, and it's so simple that it's funny.
Right, and now, it is political season. So this is what's going on in the political debate. It happens all the time in politics, country versus country. That's geopolitics right there, is that we have to set up other enemies. And when we don't set up an enemy, what happens is there's infighting in the country. If we don't have a bigger enemy for our survival that we're fighting outside of the country, what happens is we all fight amongst ourselves. Right, so a good leader, and this is in business too. This is if you're a coach or you're a leader or even if you're a minister, if you have people that you are leading, a good leader, it can't be nice all the time. You have to dial up. There's some kind of thing. There's a force, there's a cause, there's a reason for us to come together and put in the emotional effort to be loyal to the cause. It's bigger than me, that I would sacrifice. We have to have it. This is what happened in World War II. World War II, the whole country came together because our survival was at stake. We're fighting the big evil, and this is in every business, in every organization, and sports teams. That's why sports teams have rivalries. If we don't have one, we'll create one.
There has to be a perceived threat. There has to be a perceived threat.
If there's no, and as somebody tweeted in to Quack, I was on Quack Show today on WCCP talking about this. If there's no antagonist, there can be no protagonist.
Absolutely.
So every good guy has to have a bad guy. Now, I want to roll that. Now, we've been talking about groups, but this goes down to the individual as well. There are some high-performing individuals that they have to have what we call frenemies, right? They have to have, it's the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird thing. They have to have an arch nemesis. It makes them perform better. Without it, it's like they're a half a person.
Yep. Yeah, and we see it even when you're Goliath and you're going up against a smaller opponent. You still have to create these perceived threats. You have to make yourself. If you're Michigan, and I hate to use Michigan and App State because App State won, but in that game, you have to make your team feel like App State is a threat, even though you're miles and miles better than them. If you don't have that perceived threat, you can fall. You need to bring everyone together in that common mission, that goal against that perceived threat. If you don't, you can and most likely will lose. So that's why coaches and leaders still do that. Even when there's no real threat, they create a threat because they need you. They need you to be together. They need you to be at your best. They need you to be pulling the rope in the same direction, and or else you'll fail.
Right, and a good leader recognizes this and will use this tool, and a weak leader will not use this tool. And if you've been under weak leadership, you understand this is what happens, that we don't have a common enemy. There's not a common cause. There's not a common threat, and so we begin to infight. Now think about this, even in whatever in-group you're in, if it's your family, right, start there, ground zero, right? You got to get your family to pull together. As a parent, I have to create a bigger threat outside my home so that my kids understand that there's a survival at stake for them to do what they need to do to get done. That's just how human beings are. I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. I'm just saying it is. And if you want to move people, this is what I call motivational intelligence right here. Understand how to motivate the machine. I use it on myself. And then as a strong leader, we use it on the folks that are following us because they're not going to follow us unless there's an emotional buy-in. I want you guys to think about that for a sec because some of your wheels are spinning. You're like, what? That's crazy. But if you think about it, if you've ever followed a good leader and someone that got you fired up for the cause and there was a target and a vision and we're going to go win one for the Gipper, right? We have to dial up an us versus them. And now, it's already happening. We don't want to get sucked into it. We want to be above the fray, but I will use that tool to help people get out of their own way to accomplish the mission. I have to use critical thinking to understand when double standards are happening, to understand when my biases are kicking in. I want to be above that fray where the other spy isn't a bad spy, they're just a spy. However, to get my team to move to where we need to win, to my organization to move to where we need to win, we've got to dial some of that up. Now, Dutch, there was a big story, and I know we're not supposed to get into sports, but Ronda Rousey was on Ellen. I want to speak about that when we get back. We've got a quick break coming up. You're listening to the Get Warrior Tough radio show with Dutch Coleman and Andrew Wittman.